Good morning and welcome back to the Dogs and Deadlift podcast. All the way from Canada today, we have Leah Lykos from the Canine Movement Lab. Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Look, I'm sensational. It's Easter weekend, and I'm pretty sure that the Easter Bunny is on his way with a heap of chocolates for me. So super excited for tomorrow.
Nice.
And yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm actually in Maine,
Oh, sorry, I do apologise. Yeah, for
pretty
some reason.
close to Canada.
Yeah, that's right. When I was looking up time zones, I was like, um, obviously trying to figure it all out. And yeah, it was very, very close. So I do apologize for that, actually. So we'll go back and cancel that. So not from Canada.
I went to college in Montreal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So,
we'll glass that. All good. So, all right, Leah, do you want to just give us a little bit of background about yourself? How you sort of came about. Go back as far as you want in regards to dogs and dog training, and then we'll talk about the Canine Movement Lab and how that sort of got started, etc. But before we do that, go back as far as you like and to get a bit of a background about yourself.
oh boy, I mean, I could go way, way back to like grade school. um,
Wherever you feel like you want to go.
yeah, I guess like my first dog I took to an obedience class when I was 12.
Mhm,
And, since then I've just always had a dog
mhm,
and been kind of confused about dog training early on, like watching Caesar.
mhm.
And, I ended up, excuse me, adopting some pretty difficult dogs with human aggression, dog aggression. And to sort of condense the story a little bit, I went to a couple different trainers that were sort of using that Caesar
Mhm,
method, and it seemed to make the dogs worse
mhm.
and more aggressive.
Okay.
So then I found Kevin Bean, and he's the creator of natural dog training,
Mhm.
which really taps into the dog's natural drives and uses food and toys. And it's all positive, but it's really based on the dog's drive
Okay.
rather than this sort of like top down dominance
Yeah.
school.
Yeah. So to be honest, I'm not familiar with for of his work. Obviously I've gone over a little bit of your work, but not familiar. So I might obviously look into that a little bit further. So that was with your own dogs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I did work with Kevin as a client and then
Mhm.
an apprentice.
Okay.
And then I've sort of like adapted some of his stuff to my own style
Mhm.
based on my experiences and also like, taking workshops with other trainers and but really the basis of it is working with the dog's natural predatory drive. So we actually do a lot of like bite work, tug work. That's pretty common
Mhm.
actually these days. Like
Yep.
Jay Jack teaches a lot of that stuff.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. No. Awesome. And that sort of once you did that sort of fast forward, how long or when did you start the Canine Movement Lab?
I guess officially started training dogs in 2015.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
just jump straight in.
Yeah, I had been working with Kevin since 2011, so for about 4 years,
Hmm.
kind of getting my own dogs straightened out
Yep.
and then feeling like I really understood the paradigm and Kevin's methods and
Hmm.
had the confidence to like then reach out and help other people.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Awesome. And what sort of dogs do you have at the moment?
I have two rescue dogs. They're like bully breed mixes.
Yeah.
You never really know. One of them kind of actually looks like an American pit bull
Mm.
terrier.
Yeah.
Um, the other one's bigger, and people think she's a pit bull because
Mm.
she came with cropped ears.
Okay.
But she's really way too big to actually be a pit bull.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
both have dog issues.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes, obviously with rescues, I always say, you just don't know what you're going to get. Like my my last dog, Sunday, I adopted her as they told me she was supposed to be a staffy. She's white staffy. She looked like a Kelpie cross bull terrier. By the time she was one, very pointy ears and very lean body. But as a puppy, she looked like just like all the another little staffy puppy.
Yeah.
So sometimes you just don't know what you get when when you rescue. Hey. But that doesn't matter at the end of the day. So tell me a little bit about the Canine Movement Lab and what you guys do now, to help people with their dogs.
Yeah, I mainly do private sessions. Sometimes I do puppy classes. I really prefer to work one-on-one with the owner just because every owner
Mhm.
has their own approach to
Mhm.
their dog and their relationship with the dog, and every dog is different and needs a little bit of individualized attention. Like I can't really give a cookie cutter, like here's step 1, 2, and 3. Like every dog is really unique.
Yep.
So I do private sessions, some puppy stuff, some like basic obedience stuff, but also I really tend to specialize in dogs with like a bite history or a fight
Mhm.
history.
Mhm.
Again, like just dealing with the aggression that a lot of the rescues, they come with a lot of emotional baggage or reactivity or whatever you want to call it.
Yep. Mhm. Yeah, no, awesome. And I know that we're in a few, obviously the same sort of a few circles and things like that. But I'd like to have a chat about how you're using CRT and how that's going for you, and you know, bit of a deep dive into that, if that's cool.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So how did you discover, I suppose, CRT? For those out there that don't know, canine resistance training, drag work. You may have heard me talk about that in a few previous episodes. One with Jay Jack, one with the founder, Ashley. But yeah, how did you come across it?
I had a Facebook group where I invited clients and also the public just to join and talk about
Mm.
dog stuff.
Mm.
And another trainer had actually recommended Ashley's online
Mm.
program, and it ended up being a really good fit for my dogs just because they are bully breed dogs and they love to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
They really do.
Yeah, yeah, it's awesome. I'm introducing it to as many people as possible. I love it, love it. And Ashley's great, and we're seeing fantastic results from a number of different dogs that just love to work. So you reached out and did the building blocks initial program with your own dogs.
I did,
Mm.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And my dogs are actually 10 and 13. They're a little older.
Yeah.
So I started with my 10-year-old,
Mm.
and she ended up coming up lame and needing like physical therapy and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So we still do the program, but I
Mm.
actually certified with my older dog
Okay.
who's a little bit smaller, and she's
Mm.
13, and she loves it.
Yeah.
I mean, they both love it. I have to be a little bit careful with the younger dog, Freya, just because she came with like an old injury that will act up every once in a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, and your client base have been, I suppose when you first bring out say a harness and some chains and stuff like that to the general public, they're sometimes like, "What the fuck is going on here? What are we doing?" I'm like, "Just relax, it's all good." How
Yeah.
um how have your clients been receptive of it?
Pretty well, actually. And even though, I did mention like my dogs happen to be bully breed mixes and they
Yeah.
love to work, but I actually recommend it for almost all of my clients,
Hmm.
especially the ones that have dogs with some behavioral issues, just because,
Yeah.
in addition to like the physical benefits, I really feel like emotionally it helps resolve a lot of stress for the dog.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so
Um,
I actually have a little client dog. She's a little just mixed rescue, and she kind of looks like a doodle. Um, but she loves to pull.
yeah. Yeah, awesome. My Frenchie, I got a little Frenchie. You probably see him up in the background there, in his painting. I got him a harness, and he jumps into it as well. He come to me as a rescue, and with a bit of a bite history as well. So he gets into it, and certainly see it's a great piece of the puzzle, yeah. And that's something that I'd like to obviously chat to you about as well. I know that you've done some podcasts on it yourself on a number of different things, but I believe it's a great one piece of the puzzle. It's not going to go, hey, you do this 3 times a week drag work, and it's going to fix your fucking dog's issues, which
Right.
general public sometimes thinks, hey, yeah, this is going to be do. All I got to do is walk him. I'll try and convert. All I have to do is walk him 2 miles 2 miles a day, dragging 20% of his body weight, and he's fixed. Like, dude, no.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people do want that, like
Hmm.
kind of that formula or like a quick fix or like
Hmm.
just one thing that's going to be the remedy.
Hmm.
And I always tell them it's like it's exactly what you said. It's just a piece of the puzzle.
Hmm. And I'm really and I'm on a bit of a mission. And I told Ashley, and when I was talking to Jay on my podcast as well, that just to really get the word out there for people, and other trainers to be incorporating it into their programs, as much as possible. Um, you know Jay, we talked about how he felt that we were 30 years behind in regards to strength and conditioning for dogs, as we are 30 years, potentially 30 years behind the humans. But we're certainly making great progress in that space. And I think that once again, drag work is just one piece of the puzzle. But I'd love to jump into I know about a little bit about nutrition and your views and things like that, on how you sort of put, I suppose, the drag work into the puzzle of the play, the nutrition and stuff like that, if that's cool.
Yeah, sure.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. My dogs eat raw,
Hmm.
and I am always researching and learning more about how to feed raw. I do have a naturopath for them that
Hmm.
did a consultation for me, and we took them off of all plant matter.
Hmm.
And so they just eat meat, organ, bone.
Hmm.
They seem to be doing really well on that, but then I listened to like your podcast with Narelle, and I'm like, oh no, maybe they're missing something.
Yeah. Hmm.
So it can be a little bit complicated, but I think if you just look at the dog and do are they is how's their gait? Like I feel like once I took them off, I was feeding them some carbs too, like
Hmm.
sweet potatoes as the plant matter, and
Yeah.
that was probably causing some inflammation.
Yep.
Um, so like I noticed, their mobility got a lot better when I removed that.
Mhm. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, yeah, and like just on the podcast, last week or whatever it was, with Nanarelle, introducing some plant matter. But I think it might be just a matter of, you know, every dog's different. Like as we just spoke about. Have you had a chance to listen to the guys that I spoke to around? They're called Sen Oil. The guys, they're Australian based, so but we had a really really good chat about additional supplementations of omega-3, 6 and 9 and turmeric and a few other bits and pieces as well. It's a really good chat that we had. That's probably about a month ago now. So
Okay, yeah, I'll have to check that out.
yeah, it's a really good one. You know, not something that I really advocate for is we're not selling their fucking product. And I said that to on the podcast. Hey guys, I just want to hear about your background, how you come up with the product, etc. But we're not here to flog the shit out of your product. It's not an infomercial. you
Right.
know, and it worked out. It came out really, really good. I was really happy with it. So yeah, look, I'm a big believer in it. It starts with nutrition, and would you agree?
Oh yeah, I would say there's two things that I preach to my clients all
Mhm.
the time, which
Yeah.
is change to raw
Hmm.
and reduce vaccines.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think both of those actually have a huge impact also on the dog's behavior.
Hmm.
Because if the dog's not feeling well physically, they're not going to feel well mentally or
Mm.
emotionally or whatever you want to call it, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And how is that recepted in your community of I suppose with your clients?
People are hesitant.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
I mean, it can be complicated and a little more expensive to feed raw, but
Mm-hmm.
honestly, my dogs, like I said, they're 10 and 13.
Hmm.
They're extremely healthy, and I hardly ever take them to the vet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they don't need teeth cleanings.
Hmm.
They're not on any meds.
Yeah.
And I feel like it all evens out in the end, but it gives the dog a much higher quality of life.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. And like I've got, look, I'm on the same page. Like so both or I've got three dogs, two GSPs, German Shorthair Pointers, one little Frenchie, and the latest dog that I got is Noah. He's about 5.5 GSP. He's come to me, and we flipped over a few things in regards to diet, exercise. He's a bigger dog. He come to me at nearly 40 kilos. I put him on changed his product in regards to food and, the exercise program that we do, etc. And, he's looking fucking great, ready for our bike jaw and Candy Cross season. And he's weighing in at 30, right on 33 kilos last week, but just fit as fuck and super keen, to work, whereas that information, I believe can lead to, a dog being potentially lethargic or, then like I said, that has a flow on to behavioral issues, which could be, terminology wise, we'll say reactivity,
Yeah.
so, getting your nutrition right. But I'm not sure what it's like in the US, but, clients clients walk into a large pet store here and go, holy fuck. Or I got a new puppy. Where do I start? Or there's aisles and aisles of food and marketing. you know,
Yeah.
where do they
It's confusing.
negotiate? Yeah, for sure. And this is one of my favorite lines. It's confusing as fuck, the dog food aisle, and it's something I'm very 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 passionate about, and that people just don't know where to start.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I also really recommend people to speak to a small animal naturopath,
Mhm.
which I just hired. She's actually one of my clients.
Yeah.
And then I hired her to work with me for, like I said, my dog's diet.
Mhm.
So even after feeding raw for 8 years,
Mhm.
I was like, I just want to make sure I'm doing it right.
Yeah.
And,
Mhm.
like I said, I eliminated the plant matter. So you can always
Mhm.
make adjustments.
Yeah.
And the way I did it was like I slowly moved away from doing kibble
Mhm.
and started doing home cooked
Okay.
meals. So
Yeah.
not raw, but like not kibble.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty common. Like people are nervous to just jump right into raw.
Mhm.
So then I just finally took the leap and just bought them some chicken quarters and I threw them the chicken quarters and they crunch through the bone and it's like kind of freaky at first, but they love it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um,
Yeah.
and I suppose coming back to your clients in particular, how um, are you assisting them with the transition, or are you directing them to your colleague there, or you just saying just do it, just jump in and do it. What's your procedure around, I suppose getting your clients on board?
Yeah, I usually tell them to talk with my naturopath. Her name is Joy Erickson
Mhm.
of Joyfully Healthy Pets.
Yeah.
And her consultation fee is very reasonable for the amount of information and meal planning that you
Mhm.
would get.
Yeah.
I mean, you can also just go on Google. I mean,
Mhm.
that's what I did to start. I
Mhm.
just, and there, you could do prey model, you can do barf, you can do, I mean, there's
Yeah.
so many different ways to do it.
Yeah.
Um, but definitely you have to do some research just to start
Mhm.
because you can't just feed the dogs chicken. Like you have to rotate proteins, you have to get organ meat. It's really good if you can get tripe. I don't know
Mhm.
how it is by you, but it's really difficult to find or to get green tripe here.
Yeah. To be honest, I haven't looked for some time, and just trying to think. I think it was a little bit pricey at certain times as well, and so was depending on where you go, which part of Australia you're looking for. But some things can be a little bit pricey for sure. But as you're, but if you're just rotating through, for me, every, say, let's just say if you do a rotation every 12 weeks on certain products, or every, depending on how often you rotate, some people do, um,
Yeah.
but just trying to source it the best you can. Sometimes it's hard, it is, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to get everything like free range, organic,
Mm-hmm.
grass fed, and
Yeah.
that is expensive.
Yeah, actually, you mentioned on the before about Norel and I were talking about lamb. Lamb in Australia is very, very expensive at the moment. Like really expensive, and we're talking about the bags of kibble having big lamb chops on the front of the bags, and really, really expensive cuts of meat as photos on the bag, and you're like, dude, I can't even afford that for myself. There's no way you're putting it in that bag of kibble.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
um, but it's like it doesn't. This is just my opinion, and correct me if your opinion varies. But you know, you got to just start, and like you said, free range, organic, etc. Sometimes it's just a little bit hard to do. So do the best job you can do with the money that you have. And if it means moving away from a bag of kibble that costs, I don't know, we say, here in Australia, it'll be $50, for a 20-kilo bag or something, so I'm not sure what we won't talk about brand names, but, something cheap and nasty for, 10-pound bag, for instance,
Yeah. To be honest, it's been so long since I've looked
Mm,
at kibble or bought
yeah.
it.
Mm,
But the last time I did, I think, if you get a really good
mm,
kibble, if
mm.
there is such a thing,
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
could pay,
yeah.
$1 or $2 a pound. And if
Mm,
you go to the grocery store,
mm,
sometimes you can get chicken for $2 a pound.
yeah.
So it's like not really that different if you start to make the transition.
Yeah, for sure. And one step at a time. So um, you know, transition is nice and slow and steady for some dogs is the key as well.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. So as what's I suppose that's a big part. But how do you go with the vaccine side of things? Um, you know. I used to run a doggy daycare. Training center. And look, we all evolve. And, for me personally, that dog had to be vaccinated. If they wanted to come to, to doggy daycare and socialize and play, that dog had to have back, going back 7 years, it's vaccination every year, right? If they didn't have a vaccination every year, at the time, they couldn't come, right? That was the rules, but obviously things have evolved these days. But that how I suppose, yeah. How does your clients how do they react to that sort of stuff? Obviously there's tests you can do to make sure that they're still, still vaccinated, as in is still in the system and stuff like that. But how do they sort of find that?
Some of my clients really are receptive.
Mhm.
My goal is like not to convince or persuade everyone to
Mm.
stop
Yep.
vaccinating, but
Yep.
to like at least reduce the number of vaccines that the
Mhm.
dog is getting, because I do think it very directly impacts gut health,
Mhm.
which again is related to
Yep.
emotional health,
Yep.
behavior, stuff like that.
Yep.
And also, like when you're, again, like if the dog's physically not feeling well, their nervous system is going to be out of whack. And then they might be more reactive
Mhm.
or, different things like that. I try
Yep.
to explain that way.
Mhm.
So if I can just convince a few people to like reduce the number of vaccines that
Mhm.
their dog is getting, like I'm happy.
Mhm.
Personally, I stopped vaccinating my dogs in 2014.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So the dogs I have now have had vaccines, but
Yeah.
not in like 7 years.
Yeah, for sure. And how does that, how does it go in regards to, going into, public spaces, obviously rabies and things like that. So, I'll be honest with you, I don't know, too much about this particular subject. So I'd love to hear some. Hmm?
You mean like if I bring my dogs out in public
Yeah,
or?
yeah. Are there any sort of restrictions in regards to, like, if we, for instance, here in Australia, there's obviously diseases that go around like kennel cough, and if we were to take the dogs to the kennel or certain areas, they have to see or proof of vaccination. If I go to a club event, they do random vaccination checks and things like that in our club for our sports stuff. So how does that? How does that sit there with you guys, that sort of stuff, or no issues?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
if you take your puppy to a class, like I
yeah,
was giving classes at like a vet hospital
mhm,
and a pet store, and obviously like those facilities require everyone to be vaccinated.
mhm,
Um, and of course, the dog sports, I'm sure it's the same thing here.
mhm,
My dogs, I don't do anything really formal with them where we're in a club
yeah,
setting or anything like that.
yeah,
I imagine some of those places might start accepting titers.
mhm, mhm, yeah,
Otherwise, I walk my dogs in the woods.
yeah,
They're not really fond of other dogs, so I
mm,
keep them away from other dogs so I
sure,
don't really interact with other owners who
yeah,
are concerned about
yeah,
their vaccination status.
yeah, awesome. And do you get it tested to see their immunity levels, or you just don't worry about that at all?
I don't worry about it,
Yeah, cool. No,
honestly.
that's okay. You know,
They're
um,
healthy.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's exactly right. So, like I said, it's not something that I know too much about, and that's why I'm just, very interested in asking. Have you also felt that the holistic side of things, there's been a bit of a movement, and some people are, more receptive, obviously, to raw, to the, to less vaccinations, more outside the box style of training, such as drag work and things like that as well. Over the last few years, obviously, since you've been out on your own in 2015, is that right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, how have you found people's personality and the attitude of not just clients but colleagues in the industry and vets as well? Have you seen much of a change and more of an open mind these days?
Oh, definitely. People are definitely moving in that direction. And, I really started raw feeding, like I said, I think 8 or 9 years ago. And it was when I started really hanging out with other dog trainers
Yeah.
or dog professionals.
Mhm.
And that's what they did. I call them real dog people, RDPs. All those people were feeding raw. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I guess I need to get my dogs on raw. And
Mhm.
then, when you start researching raw, you start talking to people who are also doing things a little more holistically, less
Mhm.
vaccines, less meds,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
less chemicals for fleas and ticks,
Yep.
all that stuff.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Look, I agree, and I think that we're seeing a bit of a how can I say it? I won't say a movement because I don't like that word, but more people seeking out education around this subject. Hence why the podcast is here.
Yeah, and I actually have a question for you because
Yeah.
I also tell people
Mm,
that, especially with puppies, to try and keep them intact if they
mhm,
can for at
mhm,
least 2 years. I don't
mhm,
know how it is in Australia, but there's a huge stigma around spay and neuter here,
mhm. Yep.
and
Mhm.
a lot of pressure to do early spay and neuter.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. So some rescue groups or rehoming groups will I say dissex, but spay neuter, same thing. Yeah, they will actually desex the puppy before you receive it at 7 or 8 weeks. Um, you
I
know,
know
s-
some breeders who do that.
yeah, for sure. So, um, yeah, look, certainly not ideal, far from it. And you know, yeah, I do not encourage it at all. However, talking to people and saying, hey, at 2 years. what is what's the purpose or what's your goal for this particular animal? Because if it's just to be a family pet, well, hey, we need to have that conversation.
Right.
So for me, like I've got two GSPs here, perfect examples. Look, they're from two totally different breeders, right? So obviously their confirmation is different. However, one was done early, and he's 2.5, and he's a big, tall, lanky, goofy dog. Yeah. He's got no structure, substance to his physique whatsoever. We drag stuff like that, and one of the contributing factors I probably put it down to is that early neuter for sure. Whereas Noah's, my other dog's 5.5, still intact. He's just, he just seems to put on muscle very quickly. And I sort of trace that back to testosterone that he's still got in his body, the type of training that we're doing, so if you looked at them, you can clearly see they're two different breeding, from two different breeders, right? That's clearly evident. However, I think that if the other dog was still intact, doing the training and the things that we're doing, he would be a much more impressive dog than what he is, just as an observation, to look at, from the eye. But I also think that has a flow on effect through the behaviors as well.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
But I definitely think that, from a point of view from, a puppy buyer or a puppy owner, I'd be waiting at least, till they're, over 12 months, somewhere between that 1 to 18 months of age range group. That's my personal opinion, and everyone can have their own personal opinions. That we love about the dog world. We always have, different opinions on different things, and it's a matter of taking it on board and seeing what suits you and your family best. In saying that, one dog also, the intact Noah, he pisses on everything. Every chance he gets, he marks. You know what I mean? It does my head in, right? There'll be there'll be 10 fence posts, he'll piss on every 10 and every post, right? And when the dog next door is in season, I've got to be very careful, so there's pros and cons to that stuff.
Oh, yeah. There's never like a cut and dry, like, yes, you should neuter. No, you shouldn't neuter, or it has to be done at this age.
Yeah.
Like, I think, again, like I said, every owner is
Mm,
unique. Every dog is unique. Every
mm,
situation is unique.
yeah.
Um, I do think the pediatric spay and neuter, or
Mm,
like that's
mm,
what they're calling it when the dog's like, a baby,
yeah. Yeah.
basically. I do think that it can be detrimental.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't know where the philosophy for, from the breeding, like they don't want more puppies, right? They're inundated, with puppies. They don't want any more just random breeding, so therefore they have to, rehome more dogs and things like that. Yeah. So look, I get that, but fuck, let's have a look at the other side from a mental, physical capacity from that dog. We're doing it potentially an injustice. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I
Mm,
haven't quite pulled all the stats yet, but I
mm,
have like an intake form for my clients. And like
mm,
I said, I mainly specialize in dogs with behavioral issues,
mm,
definitely focusing on aggression.
mm,
And what is everybody kind of like, the mainstream makes you think like an intact male would
mm.
have aggression issues, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But actually, most of my clients are neutered male
yeah,
dogs.
yeah. Okay, interesting.
And
Mm.
most of the dogs I see with aggression issues are neutered males.
Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting as well. Like it's a good myth to bust right here and right now for any clients that maybe want to listen. You know, jump in a Facebook group. My dog's aggressive. First thing that comes, he's booked in to be desexed at the vet next week. He'll be fine after that. Bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't work.
No, exactly. And show me the statistics or the evidence that is out there that I don't know, let's just say 1,000 dogs were tested. They had aggression or some form of reactivity. They were dissexed, and now they're fine. With no training, no conditioning put in behind that whatsoever. Rubbish, yeah.
Totally.
Yeah,
Totally.
yeah. So if you're a general pet owner and you're listening to this podcast, we encourage you to seek out a professional trainer. But that's certainly a myth out there that is bullshit. We call bullshit.
Yeah, and I think again, it's like also partly the confusion of the owner
Mm,
of how to deal with the issue and just like hoping or wishing that there's like a quick fix. Like, oh,
mm,
if I just get him neutered,
yeah.
and like again, that's one piece of the puzzle.
For sure. And even if we look at it as well, just before we move on, but let's just say a dog, because we base it on kilograms here, or the dog's weight. If they're an older dog, the vet will give them a quote based on how much the dog weighs. So potentially that cost, let's just say it could be anywhere from $100 to $500, depending on what vet you go to have that done. you know that's if you're looking at that's a consultation fee with a trainer, or some trainers will excuse me, trainers will even chat to you for free before you even consider that. So if it's just if it comes down to sometimes finances, well, just take a moment, do some research into trainers as well. Once again, all dog trainers are not personal opinion, are not built evenly as well. So do your research on your trainer, and reach out to one or two or three before you have that done, because you will get varied opinions on that as well, but it's not going to be the quick fix that most people think it is going to be.
Right.
Mm,
Yeah, and I think it's great what you said, like to reach
mm,
out to even multiple trainers
mm,
and then find somebody who like you sort of resonate with,
mm.
and then take in all that information and like go with your gut feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And just to further on that, I believe that a trainer, let's just say a dog trainer out there should be continuing their education, should be reaching out with others, networking. Look, we're not going to get into methodologies, because I don't like to get into methodologies with this particular podcast.
Right.
Whether you're positive only, balanced, whatever. We won't get into that, and I stay away from tools and methodology in this particular podcast. It's about health and nutrition, and fit and well-being. But it's a big can of worms that potentially is out there as well. So once again, you know, and that's the beauty of a podcast. You can listen to someone. I know that we'll talk about your podcast in a moment as well. You can listen to someone and really get a feel for whether you want to either give them a call, or reach out to them via email before you even pay them a cent.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Mm.
And I actually sometimes give people too much information for free when they call me, and I kind of like solve their problem over the
I
phone.
think we're all guilty of that, aren't we?
And then they like book the lesson, but then they like cancel it because I already fixed the problem.
Over the phone, like, hey, maybe try this or try this. Okay, no worries. I think we
But I mean, I'm happy for them if that works.
yeah, for sure. Sometimes though, it just doesn't pay our bills, though, does it?
Right.
you know, we love animals and we love helping people, but at the end of the day, sometimes we still have mortgages, and we need to put food on the table as well. So I I'm exactly the same. Have to be very, very, very conscious of that as well. People messaging me on Facebook, particularly for a number of to help their problems, or you know. But that's the point of putting out some free content such as this, is to, if one thing resonates with them, and then, hey, that Daniel or that Leo chick, she was pretty cool. I'm not far. I'm going to reach out to her.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure. So yeah, the that's interesting. Obviously we'd like to jump around a little bit on the podcast, but can you tell us a little bit about the training techniques and the play type stuff that you advocate and use with your clients as well? I know that you've got a number of podcasts, and we'll talk about, like I said, I'll talk about that shortly, but I know that there's a big emphasis on play and tapping into those drives.
Yeah, sure. I do a lot of Well, I call it bite work. Most
Mm,
people don't know what that is,
mhm,
or the layperson, I guess, maybe doesn't, but it's basically just playing tug with your dog.
mhm,
And that really activates their natural drive,
mhm,
and it gets the dog to engage with you because it
mhm,
satisfies their need to like bite. Some dogs have a need to actually like fight for the
mhm,
toy, which is why you tug. But then, like, I always coach people, let the dog win the toy because
mhm,
that's how they capture their prey,
mhm,
kind of.
mhm. Yeah.
And it makes them feel really confident. Like, if you do watch actual bite work videos where the dog wins the sleeve,
Mhm,
and what do? They like sort of like parade the dog around and it carries the sleeve and it looks really happy and it's like prancing around, you know?
mhm,
So it's that like emotional satisfaction that the dog feels from winning
mhm,
that actually it builds their confidence and it makes them want to continue to engage.
mhm. Yeah. And are you using that primary as a primary reward more than say food or treats and things like that? Or you just really working on that play or that bite rather than using rather than using the other?
I actually use both and I
Mhm,
like to start people on food. Um, but then we kind of see like some dogs I feel like have a much higher toy drive
mhm. Yeah.
and some dogs have a much higher food drive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, it's good if they can do both, and I
Yeah.
would like them to be able to do both. But then, like, when you really want to get down to the nitty gritty of the training, you have to say, like, what is really motivating this particular dog?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And once again, it comes down to that individual dog and also owner as well. Yeah.
Yeah, some owners are not quite as comfortable with the tug work and the bite work, especially if their dog already has a bite history. They're a
Hmm.
little confused. They're like, well, aren't we trying to teach him not to bite?
Hmm. Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what we're actually doing is showing him what to bite, where to bite, how to bite, when to bite.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know if I already said when, but
Yeah. Yeah.
all those different things. So
Mm-hmm.
like he knows where to put the bite
Hmm.
and we can actually put it on command, but we can also make it really fun and playful. So like if you have a dog that does have a bite history, that doesn't feel good to the dog. They don't really like no I haven't met a dog that actually wants to bite someone,
Yeah. Yeah.
unless it's a trained protection or working dog.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're doing their job. They're not biting out of reactivity, I
Mm.
guess is what I'm saying. They're in a state of drive.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I used to own Malamars, and there'd be many a times where I'd almost be losing my fingers.
Yeah.
So I understand some people's hesitation sometimes. When you've got a very, very high drive dog and they want to, and you're playing tug, but it's all about learning how to do it correctly, as
Yes.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that I do really encourage people to seek out a trainer and learn in person because no
Hmm.
matter how many videos you watch or podcasts you listen to,
Hmm.
there there are just it's a very nuanced thing that you want to help build up the dog's bite
Hmm.
in a certain way and yeah, it's really important to learn it from somebody, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, no, look, I agree. And, I'm seeing a number of workshops now by other trainers pop up around Australia, really focusing on that power of the play, and the tug or, et cetera. So it's certainly, you know, more people are adopting that, I suppose that type of play and interaction engagement with their dog, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and we can keep it really playful. Like I
Mm.
use a sleeve with my dogs.
Yeah.
That does tend to freak people out who have pet
Yeah.
dogs. But for the dog, it's all play.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're tapping into the right drives, and like I said, it's fun. So anyone listening, certainly encourage you to, like as you mentioned, reach out to a trainer that knows what they're talking about in regards to that type of stuff.
Yeah, certainly. Because I myself have been to some trainers that, looking back now, I can see there's a lot of fear
Hmm.
involved,
Hmm.
uh, too much too much pressure. I won't go
Yeah.
into it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
And we want to keep it, super fun and engaging and positive for the dogs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so the Alpha Bitch podcast, you were talking about me, like, oh, I might swear occasionally. I've dropped a heap of swear words and you've been like, oh, I haven't dropped one. I'm like, fantastic. And then we're talking about the Alpha Bitch podcast.
Yeah, I think I just feel a little more self-conscious speaking with somebody than when I'm like alone, and I just like I mean, I sometimes just go off on a rant.
No, no, all good. So tell me about the podcast.
Yeah, I guess I just love listening to podcasts because
Mm,
I feel like it's a really easy way to take in information, and I
mhm,
feel like we're already like looking at screens and so many hours of the day, or I do. Like I
mhm,
definitely am addicted to my phone. So
yeah,
it's much more relaxing for me to just be able to listen, take that information in. And also, I found producing the podcast was I felt much less inhibited without being recorded because I have made a bunch of YouTube videos,
yep,
and it takes a lot of energy
mm,
to be in front of the camera.
yeah, and
Um,
yeah, and not everyone's is comfortable in front of the camera as well, So it's the reason I ask. I'm doing a presentation in a couple of days for a group of dog trainers, and the presentation is on pet, a podcast. I've called it podcasting for pet professionals. So going through the everything from why podcasting and things like that, but the benefits and how you can get started on a very smaller budget without having to spend hours and hours editing and things like that. But I won't get into that in detail, but I'm really interested in your take on how, or exactly what you just said, how you got started in the podcast, and what is how clients have been receptive, and also has it been worth your time?
oh, definitely. I feel
Mm,
like a lot of my clients have engaged much more with the podcast than they do
mm,
with the YouTube channel. Again,
mm,
I think it's just because it's really easy to subscribe, get the notification, and then listen to it while you're doing other things.
mhm, mhm,
So you could like be washing the dishes or doing your laundry, but like listening, whereas
mhm.
like watching a video, you kind of have to like sit down and pay attention
Yeah,
to the video.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? So I feel like people really love the podcast. I
yeah.
don't know, they love the format.
Yeah, that's awesome. And was there any particular reason why you decided to do a podcast?
I can't really remember what was the actual inspiration.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I will say some people have given me a hard time about the name
yeah. Who,
because
who
they
cares?
think I'm they think I'm promoting alpha training,
Okay,
like pack
sure,
style,
sure. Hmm.
which I don't. I just thought
Hmm.
the name was
Hmm.
funny.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Who would have thought of a podcast called Dogs and Deadlifts?
Yeah.
There's a podcast out there called Sexier Than a Squirrel. There's another podcast out there called Drinking from the Toilet. Like these are all podcast names that dog trainers are doing. So I think you need to differentiate yourself in a world that is potentially has a number of dog trainers popping up left, right, and center. You really need to differentiate yourself. So, finding a good name or a different name is certainly top of the list.
Yeah, it was just something to like catch people's attention,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. So, where can they find, on that, where can they find that podcast and a little bit more information about yourself?
Sure. I do have a website. It's
Mm,
caninemovementlab.com.
mm,
And the podcast is called Alpha Bitch Podcast.
yeah. On
So
Spotify, Apple, all that
it's
sort of
on
stuff.
Spotify,
Mm,
Apple.
mm,
You can also find it on my website
mm,
if you want to just listen to it online.
yeah,
I mean, like in a browser or whatever.
yeah.
So yeah, caninemovementlab.com and Alpha Bitch Podcast.
Hmm.
And I also have a Mighty Network. I kind of just transitioned away from Facebook
Mhm.
into Mighty Networks. So I do have a free community there if people want to join that.
Yeah, sure. And I can link that in the group if you're, sorry, under the show notes, if you're okay with that. I'm not
Yeah.
familiar with that myself at this point in time. I keep on getting all these clubhouse invites and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, I've got enough on my plate in regards to social medias at the moment. But certainly if you're happy, I can link in the show notes to that as well. On that, thank you very much for joining us today here at the Dogs and Deadlifts podcast. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
No, not a problem at all. Guys, so if you're out there, if you liked what you've heard today, please feel free to like, subscribe, and share. Reach out to either Leah or myself, and we'll see you in the next episode.